All right, so I called to order this meeting of the Emergency Communications Task Force at 6:35 p.m. This board precipitated after the events of May 22nd here in Wellington to discuss the potential for additional changes to the way we communicate in emergency situations. So the next item on our agenda was to elect a chairman. The Board of Selectmen opted to let this board have a larger discussion and choose its own chairman, as we often do with our boards and commissions. In the interim, to begin the meeting, they elected me as chair, and I am absolutely open to someone else taking on that role. Is there anyone interested in being chair?
I will take it if nobody else will.
So I will go ahead and move to elect Alex Moore as chair of the Emergency Communications Task Force.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mike McCoo, Alex Moore. So I'm also taking notes. Is there any discussion? Any other?
Unless anybody else.
Going once, going twice. Alex, thank you for your willingness. Mike McCoo. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Alex, you win.
Great.
Great. I'm going to take over from here.
All right. Sure. Discussion of goals and the charge. Do you want to go over the charge first, Erica?
Yes. Okay, so I'll share again. So the charge of this committee voted task force, we're calling ourselves, voted on by the Board of Selectmen, was to explore the usage and cost implications of an emergency response system for the town of Wellington, to develop protocols for usage of emergency response systems, including a regional approach, and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen.
All right. So I guess some discussion on what our goals should be over the next couple of meetings. What we would like to see. I know one of the biggest things is seeing if we even need to have a software, or using what TN, the dispatch center, already has, or what the town's need for a software would be. So I know the town has looked at a couple of different programs.
Yes, we looked at, Stuart got us a quote from Everbridge, and then Robin and I had a demonstration and a quote from Code Red, which Mansfield currently uses. And I'll get to you, Alex, the some new numbers, although you may be able to pull them up where you are now, to give you an idea of how many folks have set their contact numbers through the CT alert system, so the Everbridge system that the state uses, that we have access to in emergency situations. I don't have them off the top of my head, but during the storm, our numbers went from somewhere around 2,300 back in May to over 4,000. Right. So there was the communication I sent out during the storm went out to significantly more people, which means after the incident here in May, folks signed up for that system. Yep. Which is good.
Alex, if I might.
Yep.
I think one of the goals we need for this group is to determine what the public wants from us. A part of, hopefully, that will help us determine what tool we're going to use is knowing what the expectation is that that tool will perform.
Correct.
I think we all have a lot of different ideas. I think just we need to pull it together somehow. Right.
Lieutenant Palmer, do you see any other towns doing something different than we do now, or is everybody just different?
No, it is pretty consistent with Everbridge or the Code Red, or reliance on the local mutual aid, like in our case, TN, or it could be, I always forget the initials out of Colchester, QV.
KX.
Yeah, so I mean, most municipalities are availing themselves of those three types of systems. And it's just a matter of, it's more a matter of implementation. How does the town want to avail itself of the services that are already available? And whether or not you actually need an additional system to supplement that. By the sound of 4,000 people that is on the current Everbridge roster, I mean, you may be in good stead with that right now. Now it's just a matter of, do you need something to supplement those systems that are already in place?
Right, and how we would use it differently, right? If we're using it specifically for emergency response, we're not going to use it to advertise a bake sale or an event at a local group. And there may be some misunderstanding from folks about what other options a system that we pay for on our own would give us.
Yeah, that goes exactly to my thoughts on the expectations part of it.
Yes. And I
I
think
think
the
trying to find a way
discussion
to
we
bridge
had immediately following the incident with Lieutenant Palmer really helped folks with some understanding as to why we didn't use any system in that particular incident, and gave us all an opportunity to learn from that. And I think that will be the most of our conversations, how we use it. And that will help us to determine whether or not we can stick with just the system that works. Look, it worked during the storm. I reached out, well, Stuart was with me, and so we put that notice out, and it went out through the Everbridge system that the state allows us to use.
Right.
And it was communicated effectively. If we'd had our own, would we do multiples? And if you put too many messages out using a system like this, does your message get lost?
And I think the difference is for the storm, that's one thing, that we could send multiple messages out, and some of that would have been nice. But in a situation like back in May, we still would not have been sending a message out, even if we had our own system.
That's right.
Until something came from Lieutenant Palmer or somebody higher.
That's correct. And that's a conversation I had with other municipalities that did have their own system, that they didn't utilize their own system because, again, the messaging didn't start with the town and our local leaders. It was a police matter. And I think there's still some educating to do for our community as to how that works.
Yep.
And one of the things I'd like to offer is internally, because one of the discussions we had early on was what information was available and when. And I would recommend that part of what we do here is establish a process by which, as soon as the state police or whatever entity makes information available, it is now public. So the use of that public information for the town of Wellington is as it sees fit. So after the press conference at the town hall that day, you could craft a message from that information, because once it's out there, it's out there. And then you could put that information out in whatever format you so desired to notify your residents through Everbridge or Code Red or your own internal process. So once that information, and again, this is part of the education process back and forth. Once the information goes out through PIO and it's out to the public, that is everyone's to use as you see fit. So, rather than, once that press conference occurs, rather than waiting for any approval from anybody to regurgitate that, you could have a system in place where you reprocess that information and put it out through Everbridge, through TN, into a localized area.
And while we did that on our own level, what we didn't utilize was the Everbridge to repeat that message. And so that certainly are lessons learned from that particular event.
I have a question for Lieutenant Palmer. If this were to happen today, would your PIO, after the noontime press conference, so to speak, issue an Everbridge statement, or have they been told not to, or
No, I think,
or would they work with us crafting a statement that's appropriate?
I think based on the feedback from the citizens in the geographic area in Wellington and the surrounding geographic area, that message would come sooner. It would be crafted by the on-scene commanders and put out to the the political CEOs, wherever this may occur. Goodness, we hope it never happens again. And that way, that message could go out in through whatever format the towns would like to use. Or if they, Mansfield's Code Red, the town of Wellington could avail itself of TN's Everbridge, whatever it may be. The message would be crafted sooner and would get out sooner.
Because I'm thinking for a police matter, if this happened again, that the worst case is we release something that we shouldn't have. Hey,
That's where we would be working together on that, and that's part of what we learned.
The troopers are on Jared Sparks Road looking for this guy or whatever it may be, and we don't want to mess that up.
Well, listen, we are resigned to that's going to happen no matter what because of the prevalence of social media. But we would work together to craft a message that could go out soon that would have accurate information based on what we had at the time to at least get the initial offering out there so people could be aware. And then the avalanche of social media would begin to occur, and we would have to negotiate that as we always do. There's no way to prevent that. We understand that.
Understood.
But getting that initial information out would happen sooner, and it would come from the commanders at the scene.
Yep.
Erica, don't forget your screen sharing your emails up.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So I have a couple questions, and it's just from lots of the comments. I'm just thinking about what you were just talking about. So I just got this sweet, lovely flow chart from Eastern Highlands, and I'm just making the connection of that might be something in the education process here of educating people of, as if it's a police matter, yes or no, and just kind of build it out to should a message be sent. It doesn't necessarily need to be black and white. It could have some gray in it, but just to kind of give the educational perspective to folks of why a message would go out or why a message would not go out was one thing. So I think a flow chart is part of that. The two questions I have, Erica, you just talked about the increase in Everbridge and the numbers. Do we have a sense of, I make my connection to Power School. We use Power School for our schools, and the only group that's in there are our current parents, right? Mm-hmm. So for you, for Everbridge, does that number ever get changed? So it was like, could we have 2,000 people from 1982? That's
maybe Alex or Stuart could speak to that. I mean, I learned a lot more about it when I had the opportunity to go over to TN and take a look at that system. It used to pull numbers from, like the white pages. So your landlines, so to speak. And there aren't many people who still have those, and some of those numbers may still be active, but there's a lot of buy-in for anything other than those phone numbers. Is that correct still, Alex?
Yeah, so a lot of it dedicates on people actually signing up for the program, which, back in when we used it for COVID, it was, you said 2,000, Erica?
It was either 2,300 or 2,800. Better find that folder, I'll tell you.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, we were well over 4,000 when when it went out for the storm. So there was definitely some publicity, and I think it takes some work on the town side. The emergency, no offense, Stuart, I'm going to throw you under the bus, the emergency management director, to push residents to get out there to sign up for these programs.
And I guess I asked that question, Alex, because I think that's important, that one of the goals around this should be almost an annual drive, because if you do it in a one-shot deal, you catch the people at that moment. But the folks, you want to constantly add to that list to make sure you have as many people as you can, and they're current, that they're not living in Texas someplace and you just hit my cell phone and it has nothing to do with Wellington.
Right.
From the discussions both at TN and then the Code Red demonstration we had, the same was repeated to us, and really that kind of point was drilled home, is that it takes buy-in and it takes education. So on our part, there has to be a lot of education on people, like almost just a drive, whether it's, and I would say more than once a year, maybe every 6 months.
Whatever.
Change your batteries in your smoke detector, sign up for alerts.
One advantage Everbridge has is being the default mechanism to send out messages at the state level. Almost every press release I've seen been put out by the governor has on the tail end of it, please sign up for CT Alert. If you go to another system, you're starting from scratch. With you'll inherit the landlines, but now people are going to have to re-register it all over again with another software vendor. And I know there's a significant cost difference between the Code Red and the Everbridge. However, it's a big advantage of having the same system the state is putting out to everybody, says, please sign up for CT Alert. That's built-in advertising for you, in many different platforms for that.
So we went from 2,899 contacts to 4,063 contacts.
Yeah, so to Phil's comments and really the rest of this conversation, I think this will be very interesting for me because I think there are a lot of pieces that I've experienced in my past with the 911 center that I used to run, and we had a very different philosophy because we had mandates for early notification of the community. What happened in May in Willington, we would have been required to have notice out to the public within the hour, maybe even 45 minutes because of the potential safety threat of what was going on. That was a different environment. I'm not saying we apply that rule here, but I think that model drove a lot of tools that I participate in that hopefully we can use or will inform the conversation here, like the flow chart. We did have the flow charts. And those were a great educational tool. Another thing we did was we would reach out to the community on an annual or semi-annual basis and put out a sort of a general housekeeping message through the alert system and say, be advised, this is the start of this new time of year, whatever we call it, and you are currently registered for this emergency notification system. Do you still live in the area, or do you still want to be considered on this system? If you don't want to you have your number in it anymore, please remove it through clicking this link. Otherwise, you'll continue to be notified by this system during these events. More information can be found on the website. The website shows you the flow chart and tells you what the intent of the system is. And that sort of closes this loop around what are we using it for, what does it do, and how you as the public can interact with it.
And to that point, Mike, I think like every other communication we send, we struggle with how do we get that into the right hands of folks, because not everyone uses social media, not everyone gets our emails, not everyone visits our website. So what is the best way to do that? And we don't have all of the folks that are currently enrolled in the system. I don't have that information at our fingertips. So it's, what's the best way to do that? And one of the things that was talked about when I met at TN with Tyler and Doug was just wherever we're at, whatever presence it is, a booth at Willington Day, an event here at the town hall, our annual referendum, if somebody's outside with a table, as many opportunities where there's community involvement to constantly put it out there to folks. Not only should you make sure you're signed up, but adjust your numbers. Did your cell phone number change? Did you add one? Did you have a little one who now has a cell phone and they, do you want them to be on that? Do you no longer have a landline?
Right. All right. So what do we want to try to get for information before our next meeting? Do we have any goals?
I think you all have had or are much more familiar with the programs than I am. I don't know a lot about the programs. I don't know if it makes sense to make that kind of more public.
Yep.
And so you could, a quick kind of side by side of what does Code Red offer? Is there who's using it?
So what I'm wondering is if we can get somebody to do a demo for Code Red for the group and see if I can get somebody to do a demo. I can probably get the dispatch center to do a Zoom meeting to do for us for Everbridge.
I can share with you the contact that we have at Code Red.
Okay.
Certainly right after the storm, she was eager to get our business again, so reached right out and did a demo for us and would be willing to probably do that again so that everyone can see it. And I do have the quotes for both that we received back at the beginning of the summer that I can share with this group too.
Okay.
Alex, maybe we should at least have put some thoughts together by the next meeting of how we're going to get from the public what their expectations are, whether it's going to be a Survey Monkey type of thing or whatever, how we're going to find out what the public is expecting from us.
Right. Okay. All right. Anybody have anything else? I don't want to rush us, but I am unfortunately at work, so.
I think until we have our goals and we, set where we're going to meet, I really am hoping, and we'll reach out tomorrow to those 4 community members.
Yep.
They're the voice of the community. We're kind of, I'll say insider
Right.
into this. And so really want to hear them, that they're the voice of that group. So
When the next item on our agenda is to set some meeting dates.
mhm.
What does everybody have for availability?
And how frequently do you think we should meet right now? I see Phil smiling because availability and is
I think
fleeting.
Stuart and I have the same thought of.
Look, I'll say every other Monday night is not a good night for me with Board of Selectmen meetings.
Do you guys want to meet?
You're freezing
All right.
out. There you go.
Yeah, my computer froze up. I'm sorry. Do we want to try in 2 or 3 weeks to meet or sooner?
Is some of that going to depend on when these folks can do a demo?
Yeah, I think so. I would say let's shoot for October 14th.
Thinking sooner is better because starting in November, December, January is CIP and Board of Finance.
Okay.
And so is this the quieter
The
season?
7th? You want to try?
Is this the quieter season for us right now, as opposed to waiting to, have this drag out into January, February, March? Also, if there's any, and not to rush it, but, if there's any financial considerations of purchasing something that needs to be done before budget season as well.
Well, so that, once this group comes up with a recommendation, it'll have to go to the Board of Selectmen and they would look forward with that. So,
Right.
Again, I hear the budget season talk, but I'd rather we do this right, not fast. That we, we have a proper conversation about it. So October 2nd gives us, well, that's the 7th is still 3 weeks from today.
Yeah, so I think October 7th should be fine.
Is 6:30 still good for folks?
Yeah. And I'll see if I can get a demo set up from one of the companies for that night.
Okay.
If you have any items to add to the agenda, just email them either to Erica or I can give everybody my email if you don't have it. I think
There's, I think, 2 distinct parts to this conversation. One is the mechanism, be it to either buy a program from a vendor or use the system that's available through the dispatch center. And a totally separate discussion is when and what should a message contain.
correct.
If the storm comes and there's trees down all around town, is that worthy of sending something out to everybody? Or when it gets escalated to where we have some resources available for people to get water and things like that, is that appropriate? If there's another criminal situation, when would that be sent out? Or should it even be sent out at all? That's perhaps the more important part of the discussion, is when and what gets sent out. Then you can figure out, which mechanism to send it out.
I think part of that flow chart that we talked about having before was knowing what is something that we can send out and what is outside of our jurisdiction. Something like Lieutenant Palmer said, something that's already been put out there publicly from the state police is something that then we can share, and how we use that system on an investigation that is outside of our jurisdiction. We really work with them to craft something that's appropriate. But once it's out there in public, anything further. So not everything would be something we want to put out, because we wouldn't want to put out misinformation. I wouldn't want to go out and put information out about a fire without first consulting with the fire department, the fire chiefs on information like that. or on the schools without consulting with Phil. So same kind of concept. And I think we have a lot of those protocols. This was an incredibly rare event. Again, I think we all knock on wood. We say we hope that we don't have to find ourselves in this place, but understand what we can do and going forward, what we can and cannot do. I know I certainly learned a lot about it and would look at things very differently next time.
Lieutenant Palmer, do you know, I mean, look at this is, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There's got to be some town that's got something like this. Do you know of any towns that have kind of built something that we could look at? Even if it's not Everbridge, you can take some of those pieces. Do you know of any places that have done something like this?
Yeah, Mansfield's got a code red system.
But they have their
So,
system. Do they have
yeah.
the plan behind it?
Yes. They're, you know, in that instance, they were still beholden to in the early hours to the on-scene commanders. So the information that everyone was looking for didn't get communicated until later. But I would say that you're well on the way towards, no matter what the system is. Again, the system, my contribution, I hope, is going to be not necessarily the system that you use, but the process by which you determine what info to get out there and how quickly to get it out. And in part, if it has something to do with a criminal investigation, it's going to fall to us to communicate clearly with you what information is available and what can you put out there and not have to worry about impeding investigations or you know, giving the keys to the kingdom away. And that's something that we're going to be responsible for in conversations with you. So the points of contact, who to reach out to, and those are frequently changing in our day and age for the state police. You know, I'm currently the barracks commander. I have an executive officer and the PIO people are in place. Those would all be people's contact info that you would have so that if the need were to arise, you could contact us quickly and we could filter that information in such a way that the whatever came out through you would be valuable to the citizens and timely and safe to put out there.
And adding that regional approach to all of that, like you said, Mansfield had one, Stafford, I believe they have the Everbridge system. But
Do
again,
they have a written, I guess my question, Eric, is do they have a written plan behind it? Something that, so you have the system, if there's a written plan we can look at it, that's where you're not reinventing the wheel to go, wow, that's a really good piece. We should try to include that. And then you take, you know, the experts in the room. I'm maybe the expert.
I can reach out to the resident troopers in Mansfield, Stafford, Ellington, Summers. We can have Tolland, and we'll get whatever protocols they have
That'd be great.
in place, and that way we can kind of sift through all of them. And I'm looking at strategic plans for the state police. So, you know, adding this to a review would be no problem for us. We can get that to you to kind of help you make up your minds.
That'd be great.
Perfect.
Yeah, Phil, I would say that as far as the idea of reinventing the wheel, I think there are wheels all around us.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of wheels to look at. A lot of towns have stuff, and other institutions, you know, including places I've worked before that are not necessarily municipal, but they have procedures, even to the point where they have pre-canned messages in their messaging system for certain types of incidents, so that it doesn't take time to craft a message. Everyone's pre-approved a message. And if it's in the right place on the flow chart, you just hit send and it goes. And it goes even to multimedia. If it's the right place in the flow chart, it can go out on social media and everywhere else. So I think we can draw from all those resources around us and get someone wheel and apply it.
That would help me just so I can see what's out there.
so
My only other question was, and Mike brought up the survey, Alex. I don't know, that can take a long time. One, because you have to develop, and then two, you have to administer.
Right.
And sometimes you want to, if you have the review of the programs, does it make sense to try and have some draft questions next time? Or is that too, because if we have it prepared ahead of time, some of the thoughts, at least you can have those in your head as you're listening to the presentations.
Right.
do we want to set multiple meetings or just go kind of one at a time?
I think let's get to the next meeting just to see what.
Get more members.
More members.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Alex, if you want people to bring questions to the meeting, I'll bring 2 or 3 questions that I don't think we need a lot of questions for the public. I think we need to
I don't
ask,
think either.
what do you expect to hear from your town leaders? And how soon do you expect to hear it? And what methods do you have to receive communication? And obviously there might be a couple more questions than that, but I don't think there are a lot of questions. Then we can take that information and see where we can fit into that.
Yep. So you wanna
Erica,
hold off-
can you set up a email address that will be pertinent to this? So as we ask around and, and probably ask on social media if anybody has input as to, what items you feel you should be notified about on, in either emergency or non-emergency basis, please email this address and start the discussion that way.
I will look into that. Phil,
Unless
when
you wanted to go,
when
unless you wanted to
do
go
like
to
a-
your email, but I figured it'd be best if it.
Yeah, I
a
mean, I know,
segregated-
listen.
A separate one somewhere.
Yeah, listen, after the incident, I asked for folks to send me any comments and questions. This is what I got in my email, and I printed them all out and read them all. And Lieutenant Palmer sat through that meeting, I thank you again, where we addressed just about every concern that folks gave us. So if we give them an email address, I don't think they're afraid to use it. So find out what we do. If we end up with a survey, the responses may come through that, and it may not need a separate email address. But I'll see what that takes with our IT folks.
I could do a Google form pretty snappy, so.
Yeah, you're a little bit better at Google. I will hopefully have an assistant here soon to help with those things. I'm flying solo right now.
All right, so do we want to have one of the vendors come in for next meeting, or do you want to wait and let's just go over questions next week to try to get something to get, or the next meeting, I'm sorry. And then do the vendors further down the road, once we start getting some questions back and,
Might as well start with one of them.
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. Sounds
I think
good.
we should be able to do both, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Does anybody have anything else?
I don't.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion for adjournment?
Second,
So moves, yes. Second.
all in favor?
I.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Mike,
Thank
don't
you.
go away yet.